for the first parts of our training. So I'd like to welcome you today to the third of a series of training webinars that we're giving people to get you oriented to the additional features of our online database. So Tim, you want to go to the second slide? All right. So as we noted in the announcement for today's webinar, the purpose of this particular training is to introduce you to the reporting tools and the download functions of the database, which are going to be available to all of you as of today. And we think you're going to find these tools really useful to a lot of the work you're doing, and we're pretty excited about them. So just to outline what we're going to cover today and a few details about the webinar, as Tim noted, the presentation is being recorded, and we plan to have the video presentation available on the website within about 2 weeks. So you can check back sometime around October 26th, and you'll have an opportunity to rewatch this at your convenience, or you can also let other people know that might have missed it, that it is online. And we're going to send out a mailing about that, too. We also are planning to provide a much more detailed PowerPoint that will have step-by-step instructions that'll be a help documentation. And that's going to be posted on the website by November the 7th, or possibly sooner. But you can check for that around that first week of November. So today we're going to get started with a PowerPoint that is going to provide a brief review of the IWMM and Avian Knowledge Network portal. And it's going to reiterate some of the important definitions that are particular to the system that we're using. Some of this was already covered in the first PowerPoint, but we just want to reiterate this and make sure everyone's following along. So the PowerPoint is also going to provide an overview of the reporting tools. So Tim Jones, who's the science coordinator for the Atlantic Coast Joint Venture, he's also our database team lead and has been very involved in the development of the database. And he's going to present you with this information. So once we cover the initial material in the PowerPoint, we're then going to move to a live demo, and Tim is going to show you what each of the new tools does and how to actually use them. So at this time, you can unmute your phone and ask questions at any point. If you're getting lost about something that he's showing you, feel free to jump in, and we can slow it down and try to walk you through things. So with that, I'm going to hand this over to Tim.
Thanks, Linda. So for those that haven't been part of the previous two trainings, I just wanted to cover that the IWMM database has been built by Point Blue Conservation Science. They are a nonprofit organization that is heavily involved in the development of the Avian Knowledge Network. As a node of the Avian Knowledge Network, if everyone on the phone is active participant, you have to register, and that all the data contributed is governed by sharing levels that are selected by the project leader for each project. So our database for the Integrated Waterbird Management and Monitoring database, our project has 3 areas: data entry, which was covered in the second training series, and that recorded webinar is available on the IWMM website. Reporting, which we're going to cover today, and data export. Just a few definitions here. Everybody that's participating in IWMM is doing so under the guise of what is called a project. So that is the equivalent for those of you in the service of a refuge or a complex, depending on how up. But it is a collection of individual survey units that are managed by a single project leader. Then the survey unit is the actual unit where you do observations, where you're doing your bird counts, vegetation counts, and then just sharing level, that's a definition provided to us by the Avian Knowledge Network. If you want more information, we have information on our at the IWMM website. You can also go to the Avian Knowledge Network and look at how our sharing levels differ slightly from AKN sharing level. All right, so I'm going to jump right into the reporting tools that we've developed to go along with the IWMM database. When you log in and you go to the reports, you're going to end up on this page that says Generate Reports. And there are several sections. First one, the most important, is up at the top. It's report type. We have reports for your bird survey data, or your unit conditions, the environmental site conditions that you record every time you go to do a bird survey. You can get a report on bird use days and also on your vegetation surveys. You note there's to the right of those lists of report types, there's a report output description. So for whichever report type is highlighted, if you click on that, which I'll show you in a few minutes, you'll get a description of what all is provided in the report for that set of data types. Below that, there's an area where you're going to designate what project. I am a database administrator, so I see all of our projects when I log in here. You should as well. At least that's the way it's supposed to be working, but since I don't have a restricted account, I have confirmed that. But you should be able to see all the registered IWMM projects in this list. You'll find yours in the list. The box to the right of the project shows you the various survey units for that project. We've got an area for protocol selection and then some more below it. So let's step through each of these. So as I said, there are 4 survey types. Bird surveys, they give you basically a summary of the number of visits, number of total birds seen for those visits, number of different species observed, and number of individuals by species. Unit conditions gives you a set of statistics on 5 of the parameters that are collected every time you visit a unit to do a survey. Bird use days actually estimates bird use days. It's limited to, well, the graphs are limited to 5 species, but the tables are limited to however many species you select. And they actually give you the estimated total bird use over a specified time period. And then vegetation surveys gives you a report on the plant taxa identified, also generates a seed production index for waterfowl food, and gives you summary statistics on the percent cover. If you want more information on each report type, you would go into the Generate Reports page, select your report type under Report Type, and then click on Report Output Description, and you'll see a detailed help of what all is actually calculated and reported back to you at report. This bird survey report help tells us that we're going to get a summary table initially that shows the number of visits, total number of birds counted, total number of species detected, and then it computes a diversity index for the location, dates, and taxes selected. You're also going to get a report table of the total number of birds counted, relative frequency of each tax counted, and some other stats. There's an option here for selecting a pivot table, which is going to simplify the report table to include only the total counts of each taxon. Don't worry about if this doesn't make sense. We're going to step through each of these reports and show you exactly what it provides. And then each of these output description will actually give you any of the calculations that are done, or give you citations for where we got the calculations from. we look at unit conditions and look at what unit conditions report does. It is, unit conditions is always generated for each unit separately, and it gives us the minimum, maximum, median, mean, and standard deviation for salinity, water level, water depth, land cover percentage, and vegetation height categories. Bird use days is probably our most complex report that we provide, and it's trying to estimate the area under a curve based on your surveys over a specified time period of what the total number of birds that you would have expected to use your unit or project at that specified time period. We actually calculate it a couple of different ways, and this is giving you the detail on how we calculate bird use days. And then down at the bottom, we actually give you the citations where we took the calculation method from. This also produces migration curves based on your survey data, and those can be saved, and we'll show you those when we get to the interactive portion here. Vegetation survey report summarizes your annual vegetation survey. Right now, everybody should have, last year, or this previous year was the first year that those surveys have been done at most locations. We have a few test sites that might have 2 years worth of data now. It gives you the total plant taxa identified, plant diversity index, that's just Shannon's diversity index, percent cover of all the taxa identified broken out by annual versus perennial plants. And then this is where you also get your seed production index calculated. It gives you the dominant plants broken out by 50-20 rule, and so we'll show you that in just a few minutes. So to generate a report, you actually have to specify or can specify criteria to select what of your data are going to go into those reports. So I want to go over the different elements of that report generation page before we get into the interactive section. So if we look at doing a bird survey report, this is what you're going to look at. You're going to select your project from the project list. Also note, and I'll explain this one more when we get into the interactive, is that you can select to do bird surveys for larger regions. Once you get your project selected, then you can choose to select individual units, or you can select them all. And that's all I was pointing out there. Over on to the right of the project unit selection, there's a protocol selection box. And I will say that for the majority of you, you'll be using just the IWMM ground survey protocol. There are some sites that have used these other protocols, but that's the majority. If you only have one survey protocol in use, you don't have to select anything in this particular box. Below the project and unit list is where you select your species. You have options of selecting from a list of all species. We have a set of guilds identified that I will show you when we get into the interactive portion to specify. So I'll show you now. Our guilds are larids, breeding marsh birds, non-breeding marsh birds, non-waterfowl open water species, or birds, wading birds, waterfowl. Once you select the guild, it will, over in the right, show you the species at guild, and you can select from those species, select them all. here I've selected waterfowl, and over on the right box you can see the list of species. Select them all, or I can go in and select the species, the waterfowl species that I'm interested in from this list on the right. To the right of the species list is a date range selection. You get a choice of all dates or setting a user-specified date range. This is really important for the bird use days report. They require a user-specified date range. It is not sensible to estimate bird use days over multiple years, so we make you specify a date range. Here I've specified a start date of September 1st, 2012, ending in 4/30/2016. And what that is telling the report generation to do is generate a bird use day curve from 9/1, so September 1st, to April 30th of every survey year. Okay, so I've got 4 different survey periods within this date range that I'm going to get tables and figures for.
And Tim, does that reflect the non-breeding period?
That particular date range reflects non-breeding period, yes.
Okay.
So that's what we would be interested in if we were trying to estimate our, for this case, since I had waterfowl selected, if I was trying to sort of think about my total bird use days over the non-breeding period, that's the date range that I would use in the Atlantic Highway. But that's customizable. I will say that entering date ranges in this report tool is not quite as flexible as it is in the data entry portion of our database. So when we get into the interactive, I'll show you a couple of quick ways to move around selecting these date ranges. Because, if you can remember year, month, day, then you can type it in directly. But until you get that memorized, it's got to be in that format or it's not going to be happy. Oh, and the other thing is that you need to check the little box to be sure you apply your date range, otherwise it won't do that. There's also, under the species list, there's a results grouping. You can group results by units or project. So you'll get the data summarized either by units, projects, and then also by individual date or lumping it by year. This is also where you get the choice for the bird survey reports of choosing to have a pivot table produced. Pivot table is just a simplified output that shows you the total counts for each species, and then each column is a different date or year depending on your selection grouping. A couple of things to note is that the criteria do change depending on which type of report you're setting up. So just be aware that as you go through, you're going to see that main page is going to change depending on which report type you select. So it's designed to work that way. Sometimes that's confusing to users, so I just wanted to get that out there. Right now, we've worked with some of our end users to define these reports. Right now, these reports are fixed. To make changes to them means going back to Point Blue, providing them funds to actually change these reports. So we tried to keep this set of reports to very basic reports that we think most users are going to want to have access to. Reports that you need that go beyond this basic set of reports, you can always download all of your own data and generate those reports yourself or work with IWMM staff to get those. I already mentioned the date formats. not as flexible as they are in the data entry portion of the database, so just keep aware that when you're entering those date range, it's per month a format. And then also watch your group options. That changes how the reports are presented, and for the bird survey data, what reports or what tables can actually be shown. All right, so I'm just going to quickly walk you through an example bird survey report. And once we're done with this, we're going to get into actually demoing the database live, hoping that goes smoothly from that point on. So I click bird survey for my report type. Under the report type, I've selected Matamesquite National Wildlife Refuge as the project I want a report run for. I click select all, so it selected all of my units. I just want to see data from ground surveys, and I only wanted to see waterfowl, so I selected my waterfowl guild and then selected all the species under the waterfowl guild, and I'm going to select all dates. I want this report across all the dates that they've collected data. Oh, and I grouped it by units and years, so we're not going to get individual survey dates. We're going to get everything summarized to the year by unit. So once you press the Generate Report button, you wait a few minutes. The data, there's a R server in California that's reaching out, querying the database from Matamesquite, getting the appropriate data out, and generating the report. That gets sent back to the web server, and then the user is presented with a set of tables. So first, we're going to, the first table is number of detection for each bird species for each date or year. So remember, I selected year, and management unit. So a couple of things, these tables get quite big. There are 58 pages in this first table. 10 rows are visible at a time. And this is all representing unit number 1 at Matamesquite, year 2010. And you can look at how many visits there were in November, December, January, February, etc. You can use this section to navigate between pages of these data. Note here that there is an option to save each of these tables to a CSV file that can be opened in. There will, by the end of the month, be an option to save all of this as a single PDF where you see all 580 entries in this one table sequentially. I'll have to page through. I mean, there'll be multiple pages of a report. They're working on being able to output all of this into one PDF file for you. The next table down shows us a summary of the bird observations. So in Unit 1 in 2010, we had a count of 190 tundra swan, 2 unidentified dabbling duck, 1 with, that's 2010. The next set of records is for Unit 1 from 2011. Tells you the relative frequency based on all the individuals seen, the average count, gives you estimated birds per hour based on how long your survey took, and also gives you a density in birds per hectare. If you were to choose the pivot option, the pivot table option, this would be the first table you would see in this report. And basically all it's telling you is for each species is a row. And there are 3 pages of species observed at Matamesquite. And this table is extremely wide, so this is just the first section. This is the column headers give us the unit identifier to the left of the colon and the year to the right of the colon. So these first 4 columns are Unit 1, was surveyed in 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, and then we move over, next column, moving into Unit 2. And it was surveyed in 2012 and 2013. We can look at the total number of individuals for each species across those periods. And there's a scroll bar that will be down here. You can scroll out and look at everything to the right. All right, I'm going to switch over here and take us to, hopefully this works. Everybody see my login to the IWMM portal? Yes? Is that what everybody's seeing?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay. All right, I'm going to log in here. Okay, so we get to our landing page on our dashboard. I'm going to come over and click on Reports. And I've been working a lot with Madam Mesquite. I'm actually on there as a project leader. So that's where it automatically dumps me in the project list. So we're just keep working there. So I'll show you how you do what I set up before. So we're going to click Bird Survey. Remember, if you want to be reminded of what's in this report, click on Output Description, and it will tell you what's going to be in that report and tell you how it's all calculated. To get rid of this, click again on Output Description, and it rehides itself. So we'll do Madam Mesquite. We will not select all the units this time, so I can come down here. I can use my, click on one, control click to select discontinuous ones, or shift to select a continuous range, just like you would in any Windows application. I'm going to go ahead and just say I just want to be sure that I only want the ground survey, so I'll click on that in the survey protocols. Let's look at shorebirds for a different change. We'll go ahead and leave 8 ranges. For now, I'll show you how to change that in a minute. And we will do the result grouping by year, by unit, and by year. And then this is where eventually this Generate PDF will allow you to download the entire report as a PDF file. It is not working right now. If you go there, you're going to get a blank file. The way you want to do is click on Generate Report. So it's sending a SQL query to the server. Already got our report back. So this is where we get our summary of, for each unit and year. We're looking at in November in 2010, there were 4 visits to MI-10 North. And as I said, there are multiple pages to this report. You can click through the pages here, just like you would on any web app, or use the next and previous button. If I ask for a CVS output of this, I would click here, and hang on a second. It downloaded the CSV file, which I can then open in Excel, and basically it gives me the data that's in that table that I can then do whatever I want with. Okay? So that's all the data that's in that table in an Excel file now. We go down, here's the summary of bird observations. So for, you got the unit. So also on these, if you click on any of the column headings, you can, that will set the sort. Right now it's sorted by unit. I can sort by year if I want, or reverse sort. So the indication is the up arrow highlighted, it's an increasing sort. Down arrow, it's a decreasing sort. So you can sort by species, unit. The first column is always the default sort or reports, or you can sort by any of count, relative frequency, average count, max count, birds per hour, or birds per hectare. Once again, this table has 4 pages to it. So I can jump over to page 3. Okay. Go back up. I'll set a date range here, so I'll click on date range. That makes these boxes active. If you don't remember the date format, you can you get a pick list. You can move back month by month. But let's say you wanted to go back to 2000, pick up all the data from 2010, which is when Madame Mesquite started collecting data. A little hard to click on this back arrow for that many months to get back to 2010. So if you click here, then that takes you to a overview of 2016 where you can select any of the months. But if you click once again on the year, then you get the years, and you'll see what years are available. So I can click on 2010, and then I can click on September and September 1st. Does that make sense? Okay. And then I'm back in October. I want to go to April, and there's my April 30th. Now I have to click here to tell it that I want to apply that range, otherwise it won't be applied. And it tells me now that I'm going to get tables for 6 different user-defined periods. So we'll rerun the same report. All I'm adding is the user-defined period. Your summary report up top is still the same, but now you're going to be getting these calculations over those periods. Okay. Any questions about bird survey report? I can show you the pivot tables here, I guess. Click pivot tables on. Take the date range off here for a second. Great report. You still get the same summary about the number of visits, total number of detections, and then the second table is your pivot table. So remember, my 2 units were MI10 North and MI10 South, and each column is different year. So I've got the 2 units with their 2 years. Okay. Linda, anything else you want me to show them on the bird survey reports?
Not that I can think of, Tim.
John? Okay. Hearing nothing else, I'm going to move on to unit conditions. Remember, these are your environmental site conditions that are being collected for every time you go out to do a bird survey. I can get reminded of that by clicking on the report output description button, and it tells me I'm going to get the minimum, maximum, median, mean, standard deviation for these 5 sets of parameters: salinity, water level from a water gauge reading, water depth, the percent of the unit in each of 6 categories of depth, and the percent land cover in 5 broad categories: open water, bare ground, shrubs, forest, and emergent, and then vegetation height, which is the percent of vegetation in each of 7 height categories. When you're looking at the tables, if you need help in deciphering, especially on the water depth and vegetation height, some of the labels are a little complex. I would suggest clicking on the report output description at the top, and that'll tell you, that'll help you decipher those categories a little easier. So we can select Madame Mesquite. I'll select all of the units this time. This is where you don't get a protocol because we've only got a protocol for our environmental site conditions. You can select date. I'm going to leave all dates selected, and we'll run the report. So we get each different parameter is a separate table. So this first one is for salinity. So the rows are max, mean, median, minimum, and standard deviation. And then each column is a unit and year. Okay. These reports are going to be shorter because you've really only been using this for, most sites have only been using, projects have been using this protocol for the last year. You can, once again, click on any column heading to sort by it. These are all evidently freshwater units, correct, John?
Correct.
Since there's no, all the salinity readings are 0. Next one is the water gauge reading. So those are so these are wide tables. So here's the slider at the bottom where you can go over and look at all of your readings for the different units and years. Okay. Now, I mentioned that sometimes the labels get a little messy, so now we're looking, centered here is the water depth data. So the first row is maximum water depth percent in the 0 to 5 centimeter category. So this 0 to 5 centimeters is all scrunched up there. In order to try to sort these correctly, we've added this water depth order column. And if we click on that, it's going to put all of the statistics for the 0 to 5 centimeter class together. So here's your maximum, your mean, median, minimum, and standard deviation of that 0 to 5 centimeter. The next set of statistics will be your 5 to 15 centimeter classes. Once again, these are wide, and there are also 30 entries for this because we have 6 different classes of water depth. All right, so all I did was reverse sort, and that pulled the maximum water depth dry up. Okay. Once again, you can click through all the pages of your table here at the bottom of each table. Everywhere there's a table right now, you can always download the data that's in the table. Not the data behind the table, it's actually the data in the table by clicking on this CSV option. Here's the summary stats for the habitat cover data. Notice there is no sort order here for this one. But when we come down to the vegetation height data, there is a vegetation height sort order here. Okay? So here we're getting less than 2.5 centimeter, and they've denoted that as _5. That should be read as less than 2.5 centimeters. Okay. Any questions? As I said, once the Generate PDF button is working correctly, all of these tables will be exported so that all the rows are sequential within the table, so you don't have to worry about paging through these tables that have multiple pages. All right, I think I'm going to skip over and go to vegetation survey first, before I do bird use days. As I said, the bird use days is our most complicated report to date. Vegetation survey. Once again, we only have one protocol identified for our vegetation surveys as of now anyway, so you don't get to choose between protocols. Once again, we're going to select our project, select a couple of, maybe 3 discontinuous ones here. So I'm holding down my control key and clicking on the units that I want to select. I'm going to select all dates. Once again, this is a protocol that's only been in use for this past data collection season, so I don't really have to worry about subsetting the data by date range, but you can if you want to do that in the future. And I'm going to click on Generate Report. And our first table is a set of summary statistics, and for these 3 units, so for MI-10 North, they recorded a total of 4 plant species. Here's your diversity index based on those species. And then this is the annual and perennial percent cover. So it was 10% annual and 80% perennial for the vegetative cover for MI-10 North on 2015. Okay. I'm going to assume maybe there was some management action taken. I don't know. Those percentages change quite dramatically for this current year. The annual vegetation, the next table gives you a list of the actual species that were identified. It gives you the percentage of the plant species, so that's the percentage of the emergent cover. It tells you how much of the area was in the emergent vegetation, and it converts that to a relative percent cover, which is adjusted for the total area of vegetation, and it tells you whether or not the species was a dominant plant based on the 50-20 rule that's identified in the report description. Next table gives you the seed production index. So we selected 3 units, and the last column gives you the total seed production index. This is a subset of the species have been identified to be waterfowl food, and this is based on some work by Luke Naylor, who's now in Arkansas with the state, his master's project, looking at trying to quantify or come up with a relative index of buying waterfowl foods over time. John, are most people familiar with this index in the field?
Maybe some limited knowledge of it. It's something that is being talked about in certain circles, but it may be new to some folks. And I believe a citation should be either in the manual, in the monitoring manual, and it may also be in the IWMM database in the data field that explains the vegetation.
Yes. If you go up to the vegetation survey, the report output description, the citation is actually in here.
Yeah, there it is.
This one, a simple method to predict seed yield in moist soil habitat. That was directly out of his graduate work in the Central Valley of California. And the way the index is calculated, it's really designed, in my mind, to look across the same unit across years. And it's really hard to compare between units because of the way the index is actually calculated. It will give you an idea of how much food there is in your units of years for waterfowl. And there is a limited set of species, and that's all in monitoring manual, which species are used that go into this calculation. I don't think we give you the full list of species in the report output section. It is in the manual. And then you get a graph showing the dominant or the percent cover of the different species and whether they're dominant or non-dominant based on their cover for each of the units. Since these are the first graphs we've come to show you a couple of things. These are interactive graphs. You can click off and on different elements. You can zoom in and around. Sometimes the way they're displayed on the web page, there are problems with the formatting that have as much, Blue doesn't have as much control over as we would like. So there's always a link to show the graphs as a static graphic image. If you click on this, it will format it in such a way that you can actually grab this graph and save it to be included in a report. So you can just right-click on it anywhere and save image as, or copy the image and then paste it into wherever you need it. This one, I can't really show you formatting errors. There's a little bit here where the plant name is actually running into the axis, and that goes away, static image. And these are saved as Adobe PNG images that should be able to be read by any of the applications you're using. Okay. Anything else, Linda, on this one?
No, you might just want, did you mention that if the little piece that's down at the bottom about plants that aren't considered duck foods, just so that people know what's actually being, what kind of information they're getting for the seed production index. It's only dealing with plants that are considered duck foods.
So you're talking about this list.
Right, exactly. So it's a limited number of plants that that's going to get calculated for.
Right. And all the names and all the information about whether they're annual or perennial is being pulled directly from the USDA National Plants Database. Okay. All right, bird use days report. Again, click on the description. It goes into the gory details how we're calculating bird use days. So we'll go ahead. If my mouse doesn't lock up, we'll add a mesquite. We'll select all the units. not sure why it's giving me vegetation survey for bird use days, but don't worry about that. We're going to restrict this to waterfowl for now, like all the species. And this text is to remind you for bird use days report, you have to supply a date range. Okay? And if you notice, for bird use days report, your apply user defined period is already checked for you because it's a requirement. Okay, so we're going to maybe knock this down to November 1st, and we'll end at the end of February. Once again, we'll have 6 periods from November 1st, 2010 through the end of February 2016. I'm going to look at this by unit. My results grouping has changed somewhat now. You can do it by units, project guilds. Like generate report. This is being generated on the fly.
That's going to be quite a few counts.
So you're saying I selected?
It might take a while to crunch all that.
Normally, I did this earlier and it didn't take this long. This is also dependent on what else the Point Blue server is working on, and also how congested the internet is between you and their servers in California.
Hey.
Hey.
So do we need to meet with Mike today, or we're going to talk on Friday?
I guess we're just going to talk on Friday, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I'm trying to move my thing. I realized after I was trying to listen to the pesticide people and your email, and it's like, well, my meeting is kind of easy to move.
Okay.
So I'm trying to move it, but I haven't heard back, and so
okay.
I'll let you know.
We can meet a date otherwise.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
I don't think I've had one take this long.
Yeah, that one's really, oh, now you've got a message.
Okay, so this is the web server stopped getting with the R server that was actually doing the calculations. Let me let me change that to 2 periods and see if it will calculate it for us. The others have been running so fast. What happened? There we go.
Did you change that to just the 2 units then?
I did go back and, yeah, I didn't know if you caught it or not, but I did go back and change it down to 2 units. So now we have our report for our bird use days report. So you're going to get a set of calculations for each of your specified time periods by species, showing you the bird use days, the area under the graph if you think about these being plotted out. Couple of things, these tables, if you look, this first table is adjusted for area. So we're doing bird use days adjusted for the size of the unit. And then the second table gives you the same information for, it's unadjusted for the area. So that's the raw bird use days. So if we look at black duck in both of these tables, adjusted for area, we're looking at over that November, end of February, really 26 bird use days adjusted for area, and unadjusted 2,432 and a half bird use days. The corrected bird use day, this next column, is actually it's a correction to the data where your first sample periods are a non-zero survey. Go out and at this period on the beginning of November, if there are actually black ducks there and you count a non-zero count of black ducks, our report estimates the average time period between visit and adds a visit to the beginning and or end so that the curve actually goes down to the zero number of birds. And that's a correction out of a paper that is cited up there. It's this Millar and Jordan 13. So anyway, so you go down and it gives you all the unit years. Under that, you get into your the migration or bird use curves. Once again, these are all interact. You can turn species. This only plots the 5 most common species. So if you're asking for your waterfowl guild and you know that you should have 15 species, you're only going to see the 5 most abundant species in this graph. So you'll have to restricting those species to get the ones that you want, or do it multiple times so you can add all the species in. Here's an example of the formatting issue where date is actually plotting over the top of the month February. To fix that for a report, you can show it as a static image and then get over by clicking on it, either saving it. Then it looks like we have give you errors down here. And this is just telling you that there are more than 5 species, both of these unit 2 years. That's just a friendly reminder that you're not seeing all the information in the graphs. You are seeing all the information in the tables, though. The tables do give you more than 5 species worth of information. The other thing that I haven't mentioned yet that is a feature that's coming is you will, by the end of October, there will be a button to save the data, the raw data that generated this information. So that will be basically data from your project or wherever that meets the criteria you've set up in the criteria section, and that will be available for all the report types.
Hey, Tim, I have a quick question. I don't understand the raw bird use day versus adjusted for area bird use days. I don't.
Jim, Are you still on with us?
Yeah, I'm here, Tim. I don't have the visual. I'm just listening.
Well, the question is, so we have two tables. We have a table adjusted for area, which is a bird use per hectare, is basically what it gives you.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And then the uncorrected, which gives you the total number of bird use days for that unit.
Right. I think that was Wendy, and I think you just answered her question. One is you can calculate bird days for the unit, but then you can divide that by the size of the unit and get bird days per acre or per hectare.
And
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And the adjusted one would allow you to compare across different size units, whereas the corrected is going to somewhat be dependent upon the size of the unit.
Right, and since I was called upon, if someone could send me the link for the WebEx, that would be great. Thank you.
Linda, can you take care of
it right now? And Jim, I'm sorry, I just saw your request for that. I'll send it to you right now.
Thank you.
One thing I did forget to show you in the bird survey data is this regions. We do have a series of predefined regions that you can aggregate IWMM data if you want to look at larger regions. You can do it by bird conservation regions, so the NAVSE, PCR regions. You can do it by Fish and Wildlife Service, ecoregions, flyways, joint venture boundaries, LCC boundaries, Fish and Wildlife Service administrative regions, U.S. counties, might load, may not load, our state. There are a couple places where we have U.S. counties. There's a little over 3,000 counties in the U.S., and some of their pick boxes have trouble loading very large lists, so I'll tell them that their county list isn't working here. But you can generate reports. Part of the reason that we've asked all the participants to share their data at level 2 is that anybody that shares their data at level 2, everybody within the program has access to run reports on your data at that point. And part of that is so that when you do these larger level reports, it's actually pulling as much of the data together as possible. I think Linda wanted me to touch on download section here.
Yeah, and Tim, before you do that, I wanted to just make one clarification or ask you to make one clarification. For the birds that get plotted in the migration curve, I think that the first 5 that get plotted are actually, don't those just follow from the taxonomic order rather than the abundance?
I thought they were on abundance.
I think it's actually taxonomic order that they're plotting from.
Right.
Yeah.
It is in taxonomic order. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Yeah, that's what I thought. First I thought it was abundance, but then I recalled I think it was taxonomic order. So thank you.
It is in taxonomic order. The other thing is we only estimate bird use days where we have for units that have a minimum of 5 survey days over your user-defined period. Less than that, we're not able to estimate that because of our estimation method. That's just a requirement of how we're estimating it in terms of degrees of freedom. Okay, before I go to downloads, any questions on any of the reports, anything you want to me to go over again? Anybody? Okay, so downloads, this is where you'll go to download your project data. When you go here, you're only going to see the projects that you're registered with, either the project or the project, depending on how many. You have to download the bird survey, vegetation survey, management actions data separate. So we can do a set of Matamesquite. We'll do ground-based surveys. We're going to do all species, all dates, and then we should get this is supposed to be working, right, Linda? Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
There we go. So this will save it to a CSV file, and this is all the data that Matamesquite has entered for the set of units that I selected. So then you can do whatever additional analyses or have a backup copy of your data for your project. Okay. Also, we'll give you information on data sharing levels and all of your environmental conditions for each of your unit surveys. One thing to point out here is that if you look, a lot of information appears to be duplicated across the top. Basically, the way the database is structured, any data prior to 2015 is in one data warehouse, and everything since is in a different because of the change in protocols. This is the bird survey data where this is really apparent, because you'll see here in columns S through AF, these first rows, there's data, and then out here, this is all blank. And these are the protocol columns and the old protocol columns. So that's the distinction there. So it gets a little messier because we don't want to can't merge the environmental unit conditions together because of changes that were made between the original protocol and our new one. Survey, very similar. You don't get to choose protocol because we only have one call that's valid. We are not storing the historical vegetation survey data within the AKM because we couldn't figure out how to make use of a very different protocol. We do have backup copies of all the historical data if he doesn't have theirs and wants it, but that would be a direct contact to IWMM staff. You can select units, your species that you want, date ranges, download. Will download to a CSV file that you'll be able to open in or whatever application you want to analyze the data. And then you can also download your management action data through the same interface. And here you just select your unit, your date, and download. Questions?
Hey, Tim, this is just a comment for the folks on the phone. Really one of the best ways to kind of familiarize yourself with this database and reporting functions is to actually, in fact, enter some data for your known sites and then get in and generate some reports. That's how I have learned by practice. I'm not to say that I'm an expert in the database yet, but that did a world of good for me. So if folks are beginning their IWMM protocols or considering it, I would encourage them to put data in, data entry, and then play with the reporting functions. That's probably one of the best ways to familiarize yourself.
And if you're just starting data collection this season, Mesquite has data that you should be able to generate reports for if you want to see, because they've got all the data from all the protocols, vegetation, bird surveys. There's a lot of data there from Mesquite. So I know that's an example where you can go in and generate reports and not worry about running into no data. Just throw this last slide up. Linda and myself are probably the main contacts for help with the database right now. We are, will admit, I won't speak for Linda, I will admit I'm struggling trying to keep up with the help requests I get. But we will do our best to answer your questions. I do also want to acknowledge Stanton, Brian Logis for their efforts in working on the database, and the entire IWMM team. Jim Lyons, who's here, has been very instrumental in reviewing a lot of the code that's gone into the actual reports and making sure the reports are doing what we thought they were doing. Linda, anything else you want to say?
No, I just wanted to reiterate 2 points. One is that the PDF for the reports will be coming shortly. So if you're interested in that, make sure that you look for that in the next couple of weeks. And I don't know, Tim, if you mentioned that there will also be a download function for data used to generate the reports, and that should be. Did you say that? I didn't.
I did, and that's due the end of October.
Yeah, end of October. So those are 2 features that should both be up and running, I would assume, by the end of October. And as Tim noted, Tim and I are probably the best 2 to come to with questions initially, and if we can't answer them, we'll get you to the right people that will help you with them.
I guess one other thing to mention about help. I think most people have probably noticed this if you've been on the database. There is a submit feedback button in the lower right. This goes directly into a help ticket system at Point Blue, so you can submit errors that way. Linda and I both have access to their help ticket system, so we can look at what you all are submitting, and sometimes I've gone in there and seen things and reached directly out to the user and haven't waited for an email from that user. So we do monitor that one probably less frequently than I should, but you can submit. But if you do submit feedback that way, be as specific as possible. If it's a report that didn't run, be sure you specify what your criteria for that report were. What project, did you specify a date range, what species were selected. The more information we get, the easier it is for us to help you with the problem you encountered. The easier it is for us to go to Blue and say, what's the bug in this report based on that information.
All right, well, we're sure that you'll have more questions as you start using this. So feel free to reach out and contact us, talk to each other, and we'll try to help you as much as possible. Anything else, Tim?
I don't have anything else.
All right, well, thank you all. Good luck getting started, and I think you'll find the reports very useful once you start using them.
Thank you.
That's it. Thank you.